some time in this class session looking at some of the actual people who are a part of the genealogy of Jesus Christ. We are actually beginning to look at verse 3 down through verse 6 and want to saturate and have been saturating in those particular verses. I have asked you to, in your saturation of those particular verses, to pick out some people and some situations that are not and should not have been included in this whole flow. You would not have thought those people would be included. And what a scene it is, and we want to talk about it somewhat and see that the cross of Jesus Christ is not just seen at the end of His ministry. The cross of Jesus Christ really is seen at the beginning of His ministry. That the redemptive purpose of who He really is not just being accomplished at the end. At the beginning, He is also being redemptive. So you can see that this permeates the entirety of who Jesus is and the concept of His very being and how He thinks and what He's all about. Even His genealogy has a redemption that's taking place within it. And that's a marvelous, marvelous thing. You know, we really believe in holiness. We know that the Scripture tells us that God is holy. We have no question about that. We also know that the Bible has told us that we should be holy, for God is holy. And that our holiness is literally a derived holiness. That we never have holiness within ourselves. It's not anything we do. It certainly isn't anything we've accomplished. It's always back to Him and what He's doing and how He's flowing through us. So holiness is a derived holiness. In fact, everything we have is derived from the person of Jesus Christ. We have nothing in ourselves. Again, He never gives us anything as if we have it apart from Him. He always is what we need. He is life. He is forgiveness. He is peace. He is happiness. He is. And it's in finding Him that we find all of those things. He doesn't give us holiness. He is holiness. We derive this from His very person. This is a key concept in understanding what this King of Kings and Lord of Lords really wants to do in our lives. And so we are wanting to take a deeper view of this holiness. And I don't know, there's some people who are distinctly turned off by holiness. The very idea of holiness just irritates them, just drives us a dagger in their back. It just ruffles their feathers. It upsets them deeply. And I suppose the reason is because they have had so many experiences with people who talk so big about holiness and live so little. I really believe in my own heart and mind that the holiness movement has gotten a bum rap. We have received criticism, and rightly so in many, many cases. Many times we've talked holiness and didn't live it. And I myself have often said, wouldn't it be something if the holiness people would really become holy? Oh, we could win our world. We could shake the foundations of hell. Things would happen and things would be different if the holiness people would really become holy. But even having said that, that's not an attempt to undermine or tear down. It's an attempt to admit that we've not always been what we all should have been. We deserve some of the criticism we've received. We have been an imitation of instead of the reality of. We've been plastic sometimes. Holiness has been rules that we've kept, and then we didn't keep them all too well, and maybe became inconsistent in our rules. We came really down hard on people who smoked cigarettes, and yet we were free to overeat and to be fat, and more people die of overweight than they do heart attacks with overweight than they do of cigarettes, and yet we've bypassed that as if it didn't matter. See, we've been inconsistent, and so we deserve some of what we have received. We've not always been, we admit, the holiness movement, we've not always been what we should be. But that does not separate us from the reality of the fact of holiness itself. If everybody in the whole world is not what they ought to be, that does not tear down or undermine or do away with the reality of the fact that God has called us to be holy and without blame before Him in love. That the reality of holiness should be the reality of our lives. So God is calling us to that, and of course that's taking place in the genealogy and in the redemptive spirit of Jesus as He reaches back and redeems His own genealogy. We've been trying, of course, to clarify holiness. If holiness irritates some people, if holiness has a bad connotation in the minds of some, maybe we need to redefine it. Maybe we need to speak in other terms. And we're not going to die for terminology, you understand. But we are always trying to clarify what we're talking about, so that when we say holiness, people won't be thinking about one thing and we're thinking about another thing. We really need to tear down all the shambles and all the discoloration and strip holiness down until we have its bare essence and we know what we're dealing with, and the issues are clear as we begin to discuss the idea of holiness itself, and especially holiness as seen in the genealogy. So we're always trying to redefine it and clarify it and identify it afresh and anew. That's one of the ideas behind the term cross style. Hey, I didn't invent the term. It's been around for a long time. It came out of the study of the whole book of Matthew and the flow of what Jesus was doing and what He was calling His disciples to. He was always into the cross, you understand. The cross for Jesus was not an event at the end of His life. It was the style of His living. It was the way He thought. It was the mannerism of His whole being. It was the spontaneous inside flow of the very heart of His heart. It was like He couldn't help Himself, this style of His. And it irritated people. Oh, desperately irritated people. But it was the reality of His person. He could not help Himself. See, He was always into the style of the cross. When the second member of the Trinity leaped off of His throne and took on flesh and joined us, emptied Himself, set aside all that He had as God, the sacrifice of that is the style of the cross itself. See, He didn't sacrifice what He had when He died upon a cross. He'd already sacrificed that long before He got here. So He was already into the cross style in the very fact of coming from heaven itself. When He joined us in our flesh, He lived out the cross style. Again, couldn't help Himself. The holy nature of God was spilling through Him, and He didn't have any choice. Oh yes, He had a choice, but it was instinctive within Him. It was the natural flow of His life. It was the spontaneous response of His being. It was the holiness outspill, the style of the cross. He lived it in teaching of the Sermon on the Mount. As He took the Sermon on the Mount and took it to the streets, He lived it. He embraced a leper. He risked His life for others. It was constantly pouring Himself out. When He said, "Take no thought for your life," in the Sermon on the Mount, He went right out and did it on the streets. That was not just some nice idea. That was the reality of the practical ministry that He had called us to. Hey, take no thought for your life. Pour your life out. Give yourself up. Hey, it's the style of the cross. Again, He did miracles and told people, don't tell anybody. I'm not trying to build my Sunday night service. This is not about me. This is about you. How can I help you? That's all I'm wanting to do. So don't tell anybody about this. Keep a lid on it. Hey, let's keep this between you and me. I just want to pour my life out for you. I just want to help you. See, that was His whole flow of ministry. And anybody who sees Jesus dying upon a cross simply says, there He goes again. See, Jesus died a crucified death because He lived a crucified life. How else can you explain it? He was always into the style of the cross. Now, the most remarkable thing is that this whole cross style, this pour your life out, this give yourself up, this die for your world, this never ever live for yourself kind of thing, is not just at the end of His life. It's in the genealogy right here in itself. And it's really interesting to me when you grab a hold of the reality of the cross style, when you see holiness in terms of death to self-centered carnality, death to all that we are within ourselves, death to our own doing, and death to our own activities, and death to our own manipulation, and death to our own sourcing, and death to our own productivity, and death to our own abilities. When you see holiness as death to self-centeredness, and Jesus now living in and through you and being the source and producing everything, then it clarifies all of the criticisms and all of the objections that people have leveled at the subject of holiness. And it seems to me that the style of the cross style, helps in doing that. It helps in clarifying that. Because the very idea of cross style bespeaks the holiness of death to self. The holiness that cannot be camouflaged in doing, because that's the opposite of dying to yourself. Holiness that cannot be camouflaged in legalism, because legalism and laws and rules could not survive in the midst of the style of the cross and the pouring your life out and never ever living for yourself. See, that really changes things. So we're wanting to clarify and talk about holiness in terms of the style of the cross. That's the essence of the whole thing. What are some of the objections, criticisms that have come to the holiness movement that the cross style would literally give clarity to and would eliminate? One, of course, is the idea of superiority. See, people have always looked at the holiness movement throughout the years of days gone by, from Wesley all the way through, and have leveled the finger at us and said, well, it's holier than thou. That's what it is. Holier than thou. You guys think you're better than everybody else. You walk around with your nose in the air, won't associate with anybody because you think you're holier. You're better. You got a spiritual edge on things, that you're spiritually superior, and you act like that. And indeed, we have sometimes. It's the opposite, of course, of the cross style. It's the opposite of what holiness really is. The whole idea of superiority just runs cross-grain to the very nature of dying to yourself and never ever thinking of yourself. Because superiority is a total thought process of yourself. It's puffing yourself up. It's seeing what you've accomplished and what you are and what you're doing and saying, whoa, I really am something. It's all of that kind of thing. And hey, that's the opposite of holiness and the opposite of the style of the cross. And that certainly is true in the Scriptures. It's interesting that the Pharisees probably paint the best picture of this holier than thou, this I'm better than you are. In fact, if you want to turn in your Scriptures to Matthew chapter 9, verse 11, you'll see one of the scenes, and you could pick out many scenes, but here's one of them. Matthew chapter 8 and 9, of course, are filled with action, the actions of Jesus, as He's living out the Sermon on the Mount, which is chapters 5, 6, and 7. And then chapter 8, the action chapters, as He takes the Sermon on the Mount to the streets, and we begin to see it happening. And in chapter 9, some tremendous events have taken place, and the Pharisees, of course, have come. Jesus has called Matthew, as you remember in verse 9, chapter 9, verse 9, called him to be a follower. Went where they wouldn't go. The Pharisees wouldn't go over there, of course. No. Hey, Pharisees, man, they wouldn't go over there and defile themselves with that man. That Matthew person, he's the wretch of all wretches. He's depraved. He's betrayed his own people and sold himself out to Rome. And he's the worst of the worst, the greatest of all sinners. They wouldn't have anything to do with him. Jesus stomps right over there, embraces the man, calls him to follow him. Matthew pushes aside all of his tax books and gives up the whole thing. He'd worked a lifetime for this opportunity, and now has just left it all to follow Jesus. Wow. And so Jesus, of course, was in a house in verse 10. He sat at the table in a house, and there were many tax collectors and sinners. We're told that Matthew threw a big sinner's party, and you can see that happening, can't you? Matthew was so excited and so thrilled with all that had taken place and the change in his own life, and finally having eyesight to see the Christ and the hope that he had burned within him. He wanted everybody to know about it. So he invited all of his friends, and what friends did he have? Tax collectors and sinners. And he invited them all in, man. There was a big sinner's party. Of course, Pharisees couldn't come to that. They couldn't go to a sinner's party. Mercy, mercy. No chance of that. They stood outside, though. Yeah, they stood outside and looked through the windows. Yeah, peeking in to see what was going on. Oh, there's Jesus in there, lounging, as was the custom in that hour when you ate. They lounged, and he's lounging with sinners and tax collectors, and oh, forevermore he's laughing with them. Probably told a joke himself. And there's Jesus in there doing all of that. And look what happens in verse 11 of chapter 9. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to the disciples, didn't say this to Jesus, probably didn't have the courage, but snuck around and told his disciples, Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Why does your master lower himself? We wouldn't do that. Why does your master lower himself? Why does he degrade himself? Why does he embrace filthy, rotten people? Why does he do that? Why does your master pour his life out? Why does he want to be a physician to those who are sick? Why does he want to redeem those who are sinners? Why does your master embrace those who need love? Why does your master heal those who need sick? Why does the master comfort those who are filled with unrest? Why does the master wipe the eyes of those who are weeping with sorrow? Why does your master do this? Why does your master... We wouldn't do that. No, we wouldn't do that. See, we're all wrapped up in ourselves. We've got a holiness that is filled with ourselves, that's superior, that doesn't get its hands dirty, that doesn't get involved in ministry, that pushes that kind of thing aside, that only ministers to decent people and ministers in the fact of what might have possibilities for us. See, we're not into tax collectors and sinners winning our world, changing our world. It's the picture of the superiority, isn't it? Pharisees were full of it, man. But see, that's never found in holiness. Holiness that's described as the style of the cross. Never ever is that found in holiness. It was never found in the life of Jesus. Christology, who is he? Man, he's holy. He is holy, and his holiness is the style of the cross, and he's pouring his life out, and you can count on that. That's what he was all about. It was consistent, and it was constant. He brought an equality to everyone he meant. For instance, women, they were degraded. They were instruments used by mankind. They had no position and no rights down at the courts. And they were abused and used. And what did Jesus do? Man, he elevated womanhood. If I was a woman, I would be the most dedicated Christian that ever lived, because nobody did for womanhood more than what Jesus did. He elevated her. He turned to men who had caught a woman in the act of adultery, and they had their stones, man, and they were ready to stone her to death. And Jesus looked them right in the eye and told them, you let her alone. You leave her alone. I'm telling you, you leave her alone. And he elevated her, gave her worth and dignity. And every woman that was in the presence of Christ felt this overwhelming sense of respect and usefulness and elevation, that Jesus had brought her into a high position of equality with man himself. And it was the way it was in creation, you know. See, that was never a part of holiness. How could holiness ever feel a superiority above woman and womanhood? How could you ever use someone for your own ends and for your own pleasure? How could that ever be in the element of holiness? See, it could not be. Cross style is all about death to yourself. Holiness is all about pour your life out. Never ever live for yourself. Give your total self out. What are you doing, man? Hey, you never can ever use anybody for yourself. Not in holiness. Not in the style of the cross. James was really strong on this. Really strong on this. You'll remember what he said in his epistle, the epistle of James. How he came down hard on this idea of partiality. Yeah, showing partiality. Caring for some folks, not for other folks. Oh, those people are worthy of my love and trust and care, but not those folks. Yeah, those folks I could, yeah, but not these people. See, he really came down hard on that. He said things like this. Listen to this. Do not hold the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with partiality. Hey, you can't link those two things together. The faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the glory of this Christ of ours, who He is, the vitality of His being, the wonder of His very person. You can't link that. You just can't link that with partiality. See, you can't pick and choose who you'll pour your life out to. You can't think in terms of who's worthy and who isn't worthy. You can't do that. Not in terms of Christ and holiness. Partiality has absolutely no part in terms of Christianity. See, all in us never could have had a superiority feeling. How could it ever be? In fact, James uses an illustration. He comes along and talks about, the rich man. Yeah, the rich man comes into your church, and oh, you grab a hold of him and you give him the best seat. You set him right up front, man. You polish his shoes. You pat him on the head. You treat him like he's really somebody. He's the rich man. Oh, we'll pass the offering plate to you. See, you're really important to us. Wow. And you treat him like he's really special. And he goes away from church really feeling, wow, they really like me. I'm important. I'm really something. But the poor man comes and you ignore him. You set him on the back row. You treat him as if he doesn't matter. He goes away feeling he has no value. He has no sense. He has no place at all. See, you treated him. You shunned him. James says that's partiality, man. You can't do that. See, we do that. There's way too much of that in us. See, we do that. Hey, the important leader of the church walks in and oh, we're all over the place. Oh, we got to clean the place up. Oh, we give him the best seat. Oh, we recognize him. Oh, we applaud him. Oh, we shake hands with him. Oh, we invite him out for dinner. Oh, he's really... But hey, another guy, we don't know him. He's not all important. See, how do we... If he was important, we'd know him. I mean, we just... Do you see how filled with... See, that's not holiness. Do you see how filled with self-centeredness that is? In other words, we use the leader of the church for our own benefit because he can help us. He can benefit us. If we get in good with him, he can pull the right strings for us. We have an advantage. This guy over here, what can he do for us? We're not going to waste our time. He can't help us. He's not, well, we're not interested. No, he's not of our, no, we can't get anything out of him. Hey, the rich man, we can get something out of him. The poor man, we can't. Partiality. See, that absolutely has no place in holiness at all. How could the style of the cross ever show that kind of thing? How could it ever have that kind of feeling? The whole idea of die to yourself. Never ever live for yourself. Give yourself up. Whoa, throw your life away. Man, how could that ever have any place? How could partiality ever have any place in that? In fact, you know what James' conclusion to the whole matter is? Listen to these words. But if you show partiality, you commit sin. That's strong, isn't it? Let me read it again. If you show partiality, you commit sin and are convicted by law as a transgressor. Whoa. Hey, you've sinned, man. That's bold. That's down to it. A little hard to misinterpret that, isn't it? Hey, you use people for your own benefit. Show partiality. Treat some people better than you treat other people. Hey, you've committed sin, man. You've committed sin. And you will be counted, convicted as a transgressor of the law. Of course, he goes on to say, if you transgress the law at one point, you've transgressed it all. So you literally have become the worst of all sinners by the sin of partiality. See, that never could have had a place if we'd have stuck with holiness. We would have never lived in that if we'd have stuck with holiness. See, holiness, the style of the cross, the die to yourself, the give yourself up. See, that never could have been involved. Now, you're not surprised when you come to the genealogy that there is none of that in the genealogy. Hey, King David isn't elevated above others. No. He is a part of the whole flow of the genealogy. There are people who are down and outers, man. You've discovered there was the harlot. You discovered there was Rahab the harlot. You discovered there was the woman who committed adultery, Bathsheba. You discovered there was Ruth, Gentile woman. And see, there's none of this. There's none of this high and low kind of stuff. None of this partiality kind of stuff. See, doesn't exist in the genealogy because the cross is literally permeating the genealogy of Jesus Christ. It's a powerful study. In fact, let me give you another observation, a criticism, a hindrance that's been leveled at the holiness movement. Not only there's the idea of superiority, but there's also the idea of separation. See, that's strange to have that as a part of holiness. Holiness as separation. Now, I know that one of the definitions of sanctification means set apart. And there is a separation in that. And we've really emphasized that strongly. We're in the world, not of the world. Coming out from among them, Be ye not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. See, separate yourself. But you see, when you get into the heart of holiness, that whole concept has to be tempered. And you have to understand what he's talking about when he's talking about separating yourself, and what that really means, being set apart for God and for God alone. There has been a strong criticism about we removed ourselves. Yeah, we removed ourselves from our world. We wiped our hands and said, hey, we will remove ourselves from those around us. We'll have nothing to do with them. Oh, we won't let anybody smoke in our house. We don't have a cigarette tray in our house. We don't want anybody coming around our house who will even put cigarette butts in our yard. In fact, to tell the truth, we don't want to even be friends with anybody who smokes cigarettes. So we separate ourselves. I really got under conviction, because I'd come down to the church that I was a part of, and I'd look around the parking lot. There were no cigarette butts. There were none there. It's embarrassing. We didn't have anybody who slipped outside Sunday school, smoked cigarettes, and came back into worship. Nobody in our congregation did that. What a shame. What a shame. We were not reaching out. We had separated ourselves. I was so embarrassed about it, I went down to the restaurant, sat in the smoking section, emptied the ashtrays in a bag, came back, dumped those cigarette butts all over the parking lot. What a shame that we had so separated ourselves, so pushed from us those who weren't like we were. We had such an attitude of separation. See, that isn't holiness. It's not the style of the cross. It's not, oh, die to yourself. I'll give myself up. Hey, man, I'm not living for myself. I'm living for Christ, and He wants to live through me to touch your life. I've come to embrace you. It's a far cry from the Jesus who embraces the sinner and eats with tax collectors and sinners at Matthew's sinner's party. See, we removed ourselves. I guess the greatest example of that, of course, is the Pharisee. Again, you see this all over the New Testament. They had this thing about defilement. Yeah, oh man, everything in the world defiled them. Touch a dead thing, that defiles you, keeps you out of church. Hey, you got to kill a red heifer to get back in. Burn the body of the red heifer, put ashes on your forehead. Had all these ceremonies you had to go through to keep yourself, to ceremonially cleanse yourself from a defilement. It was something. Defilement, yeah, touch a dead thing, that defiles you. Oh, Gentiles can defile you. See, before you eat, you have to wash your hands. Not because your hands are dirty, but there has to be a ceremonial cleansing. And there was a special way you did it. See, they had the big water pots, and they would pour the water down on from their wrist, upper wrist, down, and let it drip off their hands, and do that over here. Turn their hands over, do it again. They went through all this rigmarole. And why were they doing that? Oh, it was all about defilement, man. All about defilement and the separation thing. See, what happens is some Gentile, Gentile dog, those people who are not like we are, who are not as important and big and superior and better than and as good as we are, we separate ourselves from them. And they may walk down the street, and when they walk down the street, of course, they stir up the dust of the street. And then a wind comes along, whoo, picks up the dust that is stirred up by this Gentile. So the Gentile has touched this dust. Now the dust is picked up by the wind. Of course, the Gentile is defiled. Then the dust is now defiled. And of course, the wind now is carrying that defiled dust, and it comes over and, oh, gets on my hands, man. Now my hands are defiled. And oh, then if I don't ceremonially cleanse my hands, I reach out and grab a hold of a glass. Oh, the glass is defiled. And once the glass is defiled, oh no, what's in the glass is defiled. Then I take that glass, bring it to my lips, and I drink the content, the defiled content. And oh no, now I am defiled from the inside out. So I have to eliminate that and protect myself from the dust of the Gentile, the defiled Gentile. See, it was a separation thing. Their whole mentality revolved around that kind of separation. But then we're not exempt from that. See, the whole movement of the monastery, the monks, was a type of separation. We got to get away from the world and the pressure of the world and the temptations of the world and the people out there. And so we literally brought ourselves into a monastery and locked ourselves behind locked doors. And maybe you say, well, hey, we don't do the defilement thing. We're certainly not into that. And hey, we're certainly not into monasteries and isolating ourselves. That's true. But I've discovered you can do that in your brain. Mentally, with your attitude, And the way you look at things, you can do that. We lock ourselves down. Do you see that that can't not possibly be a part of the thought process of Christ? The Christology of this wonderful Jesus, as it spills through this book, is all about a world vision and sleeves rolled up and interaction and come to seek and to save that which was lost. But see, our separation has literally built walls, and we no longer know anybody who's unsaved. We don't talk to anybody who's unsaved. We never get close enough to anybody who's unsaved that they can experience the Jesus that lives within us, which may mean that Jesus doesn't live within us anymore. See, it's really a strong thing to come to grips with this. Never could this have been in holiness, especially cross style. See, cross style is all about pour your life out, man. Cross style is all about bleed, suffer, and die. The style of the cross, the holiness we're talking about, is all about, oh, Jesus, do through me what you want to do. Hey, I'm an instrument for your divine use. And what would this Jesus do through me, man? Same thing he did with himself. If Jesus is going to possess my body, what's he going to do with it? Same thing he did with his own body. He's going to nail it to a cross. He's going to go down to a sinner's party. He's going to involve himself with a leper. He's going to get involved with the hurt and the pain of his world. He's going to intersect the need of his world. And the minute you intersect the need, a cross is created and blood is spilled. No wonder we don't want to get involved in real holiness. See, this is not a holiness of rules. This is a holiness of, embrace and lose your life and give yourself up. See, that's seen all the way through. You understand, of course, this kind of separation spilled into the Jews in terms of the races. We've already talked about the Gentile. They referred to the Gentile as the Gentile dogs. See, they were the pure ones, they were the impure. We're the haves, they're the have-nots. We're in, they're out. See, we've got it, they don't have it. God lives in our temple, down in our Holy of Holies, not in theirs. See, we're in, they're out. We've got it, they don't. See, it was that kind of mentality. And they locked themselves in as a Jewish nation, ostracizing an entire Gentile world. My. Jesus would not tolerate that. Do you see that? Jesus would not put up with that. Do you see that? He was embracing. He was reaching out. Last breath is all about what? Thief on a cross. Today you shall be with me in paradise. See this separation, it spills into the way we treat each other. And see, that holiness, that real holiness, never could tolerate that within its ranks. In fact, when you come to the genealogy, you see that. Holiness, it begins to spill. Cross style, it begins. Who this Jesus is begins to spill through the genealogy. Gentiles are included in the genealogy. Woo! Hey, the walls are down, man. Hey, the holiness that this Christ is filled with, the very nature of his being, the give yourself up, the always live for others, the pour your life out kind of thing, man, that is so dominant in the genealogy. You begin to see it over and over again, and it's really, really important. So you see real holiness, the cross-style kind of holiness that Jesus was really possessed with. See, literally eliminates those criticisms, those hindrances, those things that are set against us in the holiness movement. Oh yeah, superiority. Oh yeah, separation. Never could those things survive in the midst of real holiness, the style of the cross. Oh, let me give you another one. We've been criticized, of course, for the idea of small-mindedness. Yeah, that we're locked in, we're narrow-minded, we're just so narrow-minded, we're legalistic. That's it, legalistic. Legalism is an interesting thing. I want you to be sure and understand that legalism is not because you have rules or don't have rules. You can eliminate all the rules and still be legalistic. You can have all kinds of rules and not be legalistic at all. See, legalism is not really about rules. Legalism is a spirit, it's an attitude, it's the way you view things, it's the way you approach life itself, it's a perspective. See, legalism is an inner spirit about you. And you understand that legalism is really connected with and flows out of self-centered carnality. It's really a part of the depraved nature itself. Legalism is the idea of doing, and of course self-centeredness loves doing, all wrapped up in doing. Filled with doing. got the laws, can measure how I do. Oh, I'm better than you are. Sets up judgments. Yeah, I'm better than you are. Why? Because I do more than you do. I come to church more than you come. Hey, I preach more than you preach. Hey, I give more than you give. Got more talent than you have. Therefore, I'm better than you are. And it sets up these judgments, and it's all based on performance. See, legalism is a performance-oriented deal. Holiness, cross style, pour your life out, die to yourself. See, there is no performance in death to self. Death to self-centeredness doesn't know about what it's done. It only knows about, whoa, look what Jesus is doing in my life. The major struggle, of course, with legalism is that it is a total distraction from the person of Jesus Christ. See, real holiness focuses on Christ and Christ alone. He is King. He is the center point. He is reigning. He should be viewed at all times. See, it's in seeing Him. It's in knowing His face. It's in getting tight with Him. It's in the interaction between Himself and myself that holiness begins to flow through my life. See, legalism is a distraction from that. Gets off of Him and begins to look at what I'm doing or not doing. Did I accomplish it right? Did I do it just like I should? Oh, look what they're doing. Oh my, I did better than they did. See, it's a complete, absolute distraction. It's a misfocus. And holiness would have, cross-style holiness, would have straightened that out for us. Don't ever get distracted from Jesus. Don't ever get distracted from Jesus. I found out there's plenty of ways to get distracted from Jesus. See, I can get so wrapped up in preaching, I get distracted from Jesus. I can get so wrapped up in being right that I end up wrong. I can get so distracted by theology and studying and ministry obligations and where I'm going and I've got to sing and I've got to do this and a bulletin, and see, I can get so distracted. I can get so distracted. See, anything that distracts me from Jesus ceases to be holiness, cross-style holiness. See, I've got to get focused on Him and Him alone. In fact, do you understand that focusing on holiness can be a distraction? I get so focused on being holy. Oh my, I got to be holy. How am I going to do it? That I get all wrapped up, which again produces legalism, all wrapped up in how I'm going to do it and what I should do to be holy, that I miss that holiness is Him and I should be after Him and embrace Him. Hey, when we were a holiness movement and focused on Jesus, we grew. You know what happened? We became a church growth movement. We began to focus on church growth, which is another distraction, you see. Hey, I'm focused on evangelism, getting bodies in this building, man. Hey, no. Focus on Jesus. Focus on Jesus and you'll evangelize. Focus on church growth, getting bodies in a building, and you won't grow. Oh, you may build a church, you may have lots of attendance, but you're not going to grow the kingdom. The kingdom is built by focusing absolutely, totally on Jesus and allowing Him to flow through us as He wants to do. See, that's the dynamic of holiness, and it's so easy to get distracted. Evangelism is derived from His person, and when we know His person, evangelism naturally takes place. See, we will never impact our world. We will never know the wonder of changed lives. We will never know people being altered for Christ until we get all wrapped up in Him, and it comes as a byproduct to the wonder of who He is. See, He alone is the source of our evangelism, not legalism. See, you can stand up before a congregation and beat the living daylights out of them, make everybody feel guilty because they don't pray enough. They didn't bring somebody to church with them. They didn't evangelize. They haven't won anybody to God during this year. You can beat them to death, man, and they'll feel terrible and come to an altar and weep and wail, but they still won't go out and evangelize. Because all the guilt complex, well, not all the legalism, all the you should do this, will not pull it off, see? Evangelism is never the result of that. It's never a result of the contest, never a result of the guilt feeling, never the result of outside stimuli, never the result of manipulation and motivation. See, you don't motivate people. You don't preach good sermons and motivate them to win the lost. See, it has to come from within. See, it's about dying to yourself. It's about the loss of your life. It's about the cross style. It's about the total giving up of yourself until Jesus begins to dance on the stage of your life. And through you, He begins to permeate your world. And you begin to understand evangelism as a byproduct of that. And you're all focused on Him, man. You're all wrapped up in Him. And He's moving and penetrating and touching the lives of people. And He's performing and doing through you exactly what He wants to do. See, that's what holiness is all about. And holiness of the cross style. See, it never could have been changed. Now, see, that's going on in the genealogy. See, this was not a holier than thou. This was not a narrow-mindedness, lock us in kind of thing. See, the genealogy of Jesus just explodes that whole concept. So the holiness of Christ, the whole cross style, the death to yourself, permeates this genealogy all the way through. It's a wonder, isn't it? Oh, let me give you another criticism. See, the holiness movement has been criticized because it's superiority. Yeah, holier than thou, that's what you think. Separation, yeah, we were concerned about defilement and pushed everybody else away and locked ourselves in and sang hold the fort till Jesus comes. We did that kind of thing. Small-mindedness, oh yeah, legalism, locked in, this is our thought process, can't talk to us, we won't discuss, we're not open, we've locked down, we've arrived. We put all of our theology in a little package with a bow on top, and hey, we quit thinking. See, that's not holiness, but that's been criticism. Oh, a fourth criticism. A hindrance to the whole thing. And again, this never could have survived, man, if we'd have stuck with the holiness of the cross style, the essence, the realness of holiness. It's sainthood. Well, what I mean by that is that sometimes we've gotten our definition of holiness and sainthood from the world. And every time you do that, hey, you get way off base. Because the world has no concept of sainthood. Yeah, I know, we've said, well, hey, sometimes the world knows better what a Christian ought to do than the Christian does. The world knows you shouldn't do that. The world knows, hey, that's not right. The world knows, and there are those elements, that's true. But again, that's all from the legalistic view. See, the world knows you shouldn't do that. They do it anyhow, but they know you shouldn't. And when you do it, they pick that out. But see, that's not sainthood. That's not, no, the world doesn't know anything about sainthood. The world has no concept about what we're talking about. Holiness from the view of cross style. Hey, pour your life out, die to yourself, give yourself up, never ever live for yourself. See, the world doesn't know anything about that. Sainthood, that kind of sainthood. But sometimes we've got our definition for sainthood from the world. And of course, when we've done that, we have normally had an impossible standard erected that we couldn't attain. Hey, I never could be that. This is what you have to be holy, but man, I can't be that. Whew. Not a chance, not a chance. Impossible for me. And in fact, most people of the world would look at the standard of holiness and say, I not only can't be that, I don't want to be that. That isn't fun. There's nothing in that that's appealing to me. That is a turnoff for me. I wouldn't want to waste my time. So even if I could be that, I wouldn't want to be that. See, that's the viewpoint of the world and their definition of sainthood. It's the museum piece, you know. It's the dirty museum piece. It's the dusty museum piece. We're sitting stale and dusty on the shelf of a museum piece trying to demonstrate holiness. See, that's the world's view. But that's not the biblical view. See, that's not the cross-style view. That's certainly not Jesus, man. Hey, look at Jesus. Let me show you the Christ, brother. Christology. Let me show you the Christ, see. The kind of holiness He had wasn't anything like that, brother. Hey, it certainly was not a superiority where He strutted around. People felt accepted by Him. And it wasn't a separation where He removed people from His presence. No, He embraced them. He brought them in. It was for the sake of being redemptive. And He certainly wasn't narrow-minded. He exploded the Old Testament. We began to think thoughts we'd never thought before. We began to see a new vision as we'd never seen before. And certainly sainthood. Man, when we saw Jesus, we began to understand what a real saint was. By the way, the Greek word agios is the word translated saint in the New Testament. Agios. It means exclusively His. Oh, That's holiness, brother. Exclusively His. That's what I'm after, to be exclusively His. That's the beat of my heart. Oh, to belong to Him and Him alone. I'm not interested in being superior. I don't even want to compare myself to you. What I want to be is His. I want to be His. I want Him to fill me. I want Him to move through me. I want Him to do in and to me what He wants to do. Hey, I want to be totally His. This is the holiness I want. I want an interaction of His nature in mine. I want to be a partaker of the divine nature. I want Him to flow through me in such power and such overwhelming greatness that all that He is could be demonstrated through me, and that His attitude and His flow would take place in my life until all the walls would be broken down. I would embrace my sinful brother. Hey, I would bring him into redemption. My touch would be redemption because it's the touch of God through me. See, that's what I really want. Oh, that I might know Him. That's what I really want. That's the style of the cross. See, that's what Jesus was. Jesus was the flow of the Father to His world. Everything He did was the result of the Father acting in and through Him. His total life was an outproduct, an outspill, and a product of the flow of the Father. Oh, that's what I want. Man, I got to have that. That's holiness. Never ever thinking of yourself. Always pouring your life out. Dead to self-centeredness, that He might totally live His life on the stage of my life. See, this is the message that Matthew is giving us. Now, he's going to thunder this message hard and long from chapter 16 all the way to the end of the book. And it's going to end up in a cross, and you're going to see it actually demonstrated before us in the life and death of Jesus Christ. It's all there. It's going to be in the Garden of Gethsemane. Not my will, but thine. It's going to be in the cross event. Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. I'm trusting you, Father, in the moment of death. See, you're going to see it in all of the ending of the life of Jesus. But Matthew is also saying, wait a minute. Look right here. Genealogy. You don't have to go to the end of His life. Stick with the beginning of His life. It's here, man. The cross style is here. The redemptive spill your life out, never think of yourself, always give yourself up kind of thing is right here. The tearing down of the walls, the embracing, the evangelism, the spill out, the bringing to, the be redemptive, that whole thing is right here. That whole thing is right here in the genealogy. We've seen it. Hey, we've seen it. It's an amazing thing, isn't it? The genealogy of Jesus Christ. The cross style is not just at His death. It's at His birth. Wow. And the criticisms that have been leveled at the holiness movement don't even stack up. I mean, they do not survive even the presentation of the genealogy. It's not valid. It's not valid if you look at the ancestors of Christ. Hey, holiness, the style of the cross, it gives us a whole, it removes every barrier. See, it stomps into life and literally tears down the walls and removes every barrier and brings them in. And in the genealogy, you're seeing that kind of flow. As Jesus literally reached out, and God in His magnificent plan literally manipulated the scene and allowed Gentiles and harlots and adulterers and adulteresses to literally be a part of the whole flow of His plan as He was bringing the Christ into. I mean, there were mixed marriages. There was unbelievers who were transformed and brought in. That God was in the redemptive act in the genealogy itself. See, the genealogy yells at us the kind of Christ we've got on our hands. He is the bleeding, suffering, dying Christ, and even His genealogy is a part of that. He embraces the lost of His world, wants to live through us. Evangelism takes place even in the genealogy. And what would this mean to our lives? Oh, certainly it means He's embracing me and bringing me in, because I'm down there, you know. I've never been one of the in people. So if He was just bringing in the folks who were the haves, I'm one of the have-nots. But see, He tore down the wall. He got through to me. He tore down the wall. He embraced me. He brought me in. See, that's the kind of Jesus we have. I'm included. As certainly as He included these in His genealogy, so He has included me in His family. I have been brought close to His heart. Wow, what a Jesus we have. Hey, revel in that. Rejoice in that. Rejoice in the cross style, in the genealogy itself. Oh, what a Jesus we have. Let's keep concentrating on Him. Let's keep focusing. Let's not get distracted. Let's not let any of the criticisms that have been leveled at the holiness movement become true in our lives. Let's let the style of the cross eliminate all of those walls and all those barriers and let Him flow through us in His divine life. Thank God for Jesus and for the cross. Amen.